Appropriate. Okay, we'll have our student showcase today.
All right, excellent. Good evening. Welcome to the school board meeting. My apologies for being late. We don't have anybody for the community forums, so we'll go to the.
And also, Rebecca, before Justin Kent is
That's
unable
right.
to attend this evening due to a family emergency. So he sends his apologies and wishes he could be here, but unfortunately, family circumstances. So
Hoping that things turn out well.
Yep. Thank you.
So we have the school showcase now, yes?
So Steve, you want to introduce it or? Sure. All right.
Come on up. You want them to? Great. Set. So we just thought, well, this was a really good opportunity because I'm not sure everybody knows all the cool opportunities our middle school students have. It's always nice to be able to showcase some of these things. And I think when you listen to this too, when we talk a little bit about the strategic plan, when we were on strategic planning, how do we work with the outside? Not only bring the outside, we must go to the outside. This is a great example. And they're going to talk about the trip, but I do know, having many conversations with Mr. Wagner, we're hoping to build on this connection and build on this. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave Wagner and he can do all the introductions. And thanks, Dave.
All right, my name is Dave Wagner and colleague here who brought this to my attention and really was the one that got this ball rolling. It's Austin Schmidt. Obviously, you know that I'm a fifth and eighth grade team teacher here. I'm here and his older son, and I have his middle daughter. That's kind of how we got that connection. But he reached out to me. Who's your son?
Austin Schmidt. I run advanced engineering at Husko Automotive, so a lot of new product development and new business development for Husko. And one of the things that we've seen over the past many years is that there, with new hires, we interview and hire a ton of engineering type people, and the connection between the academic learning and the real life application has kind of become more and more divided for various different reasons and circumstances. So it's kind of been a growing passion of mine to kind of do something about it. And David, my daughter, and my older son had David, and kind of saw some of the things that were going on with investments here and the lab and different things, and thought, this might be a really neat opportunity. So from like day one when I reached out to the minute the bus left, it's been a really amazing experience. And it wouldn't be that way for sure without David standing here. I mean, it's been absolutely, it's been unbelievable to work with him and things through.
So when we got together, we kind of started talking about what is it that we really want to get out of this. And I would credit Austin in this, that he kind of came up with this full steam ahead FSA, the core vision to it, and then I worked with him to introduce this because this was.
So we wanted again to create this connected environment, and so we worked hard together to take the fifth, sixth, and seventh grade curriculums. And David shared with me a lot about what are those curriculums, what are the kids learning. I knew a little bit because of some of the things that David had seen. And I said, hey, let's write an experience. Let's write a lab experience at Husko around this curriculum. But we had some like really critical vision pieces, as you can see. So as I mentioned, closing the gap, right? Making it a direct application of engineering, mathematics, having them come in and run into problems and real world problems. One of the things I've seen in a lot of curriculum-based learning is that it's become a little bit more like a modern day Lego set. You get a set of instructions, you get a kit, you follow the instructions, you get to the end, you have something built. But in the real world of engineering, that's not what it's about. It's about critical thinking. It's about moving past problems. It's about, kids working together in a different way and solving things on the spot. And so we wanted to create an experience and environment where some of those things were planned in. And we even ran into some things that were planned in, which made it even extra special if kids had to work through and solve together. So a lot of those different types of things, cover the problems and then learn technical communication skills as well. So they did work ahead of the events that David will present and did some math ahead of time. They came in, they ran a lab on our floor. They experienced, what it's like to maybe not get results that are exactly what you calculated or what you predicted. And then they had to think about them and communicate back why they think that was the case, make some plots. And David's going to take you through a lot of the different things that they did.
So the way that we started, we wanted to bridge something that we had been doing here in Merton with what Husko and this kind of vision was. So we kind of started with this with the students, which was the Merton values. We kind of talked about what we do with those things in my classroom and how I kind of connected those things in the classroom. Then from there, we kind of took those engineering principles from Husko and kind of worked in. So there's 5 of them that we kind of wanted to talk through, and we had like quotes that went with each one, which was like full head of steam with that positive can-do attitude. We had this one, which, you know, is more of your forte because it's racing world.
Yeah, we just try to connect it with, you know, leaders in the world that are inspiring. And some of them they knew, some of them it was kind of fun to like teach a little bit about. So we spent 15 minutes kind of talking through, you know, staying on track, being efficient, being urgent, using your time wisely, tying it back to quotes of different people. It's like what you expect jobs and about the way you work and how you love what we do. Thomas Watson, and we talked about treating problems as opportunities that would fall away from them with a double your failure rate and learn faster. And then finally, Abraham Lincoln, again, about kind of time, money, efficiency, working wisely, sharpening your axe, spending more of your time sharpening the axe than cutting wood with a dull axe. Trying to impress upon the kids some of these values of efficiency and time management. And then throughout the day, we tried to reiterate a lot of these things and point out different opportunities that about costs or think about time, think about the different things that they were working on.
So this all started about November. We probably had like 6 or 7 meetings with Austin, myself, and then Connor and Brian, who were 2 colleagues of Austin's, who kind of did the bulk of this work. We did a lot of talking about like what kind of problem can we do, what kind of investigations. So there's a lot of curriculum talk. So then this is what the kids got. They got this problem with. We want to make a car lift so that we can put cars into an elevator to like display them. We talked about the Carvana car lifts, like how do they make these things? Like how do you get a car up there? So then what we did is we create, well, what Husko did is they created a simulator in which the students had to test how fast these weights got pulled up by pulleys. So in order to make some manipulative for kids, we used the laser to like cut out just acrylics of the pulleys so that some of the pre-learning was they could see what these were going to be before they even got there. They knew what these problems were. And so our original investigation was all about using 9 volts of electricity. So then we had to bring in some, in my opinion, higher level, high school level physics equations to kind of go through and do all of the theoretical stuff that's behind gears, pulleys, and ratios and stuff. So we gave them some of the variables and we were like, you have to figure out what's the fastest time. So when they got there, we went through these things really quickly, just what's the equipment, like what squads, pulleys were, the pulley attachment, like how you're going to put it on, what the mass was, how that represented the car, the string, which looked to actually pull it up, so the cable, the switches were these amazing limit switches that would start and stop and stopwatch, or you can see it, but they actually hardwired the stopwatch because it was cheaper to do that than to get an LCD stopwatch timer, which I thought was just brilliant. So that's a close up of the timer. These are things that I would love to have the students do eventually, but just you know, I've never seen them hardwired. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So these are the actual actuators that they use at Husko, and we were really focusing on that little motor. But these are used in things for like your car power windows and like other power things in your car. So we took a real product and then we were kind of using it to simulate this other experience. And they did get to see these things all taken apart, but this is the actual thing pulling it up and down. And then each of the kids made their own, well, groups of kids made their own control panels. So we had ones at Husko that were made as well, but then in our class, we used the breadboards and did all the electronics. I can talk more about next steps at the end because there are a few, but each student did make them. That's that whole bucket.
Well, they plugged them in, the boards controlled the motor up and down, so it was literally the driver for the
Yep. Which and then just the power supply with them, and monitors for collecting our data, and then just more pictures of it. Great. This was like the whole point of it. So that red line represented the 9 volts. So then we got numbers from the extremes of this to like do all the math work. But then we wanted to pose the problem. So the students thought, oh, we're going to use 9 volts. When we got to Husko, we pretended as though the customer called was like, no, we can only use 6 volts now. So we need to change it all. So then we could go through all of the math again in a different numerical experience so that they've now done the 9 volts at school. They did the 6 volts at Husko. Then we talk about real motor curves. I just have to tell the story because I'm doing parent teacher conferences. I was working on this a little bit in between conferences. There was a gentleman from Milwaukee Tool that walked in and asked me, he's like, "Are those motor curves?" And then he like made a comment about, oh my gosh, like, and his daughter was in my class, like, it was really, for me, it was like a really like, oh my God, like we're on to something. This is great stuff. So anyways, I'm not gonna give you that, but just some of the examples of the equations that we were doing, torque, install torque. We wanted to just kind of, I just wanted to show you what some of the kids were grappling with and kind of the more lengthy equations that some of our math students were right on. Others, it was more just plug and play the equations. Maybe they didn't get the deep concepts, but we were still working through these types of things. And then we obviously built out charts, but I just wanted to give you some ideas of what the student handouts had looked like as we went through. And then the graphs, from which we were really trying to look. I have this graph because it was kind of the whole point of this. This part is just a couple of great things. Yeah.
So they ran into issues like when they calculated, they're predicting what the best result would be, right? And issues like negative numbers that one's going to turn backwards. That's not going to work, right? So they had to make that realization. When they ran into, well, we got the same result out of two different size pulleys. Well, which one's better, right? We had a whole discussion around cost. Or if you want one solution that works for multiple things, where is the most efficient for power drop? So what is the best solution? Well, it could be more deployment might be a best solution for customer A, a different best solution for customer B. So we try to continue to make it as real world as possible. And sometimes that's a little bit vague and a little bit unsure, and there's no perfect crystal clear answer. But we talk through all those things about fun.
That was kind of the whole part of this, was that we wanted to ambiguous data to really push the kids to think about, well, how would you make those decisions without giving them that knowledge? Because we didn't just want our regular field trip where you saw, we wanted to push the learning theory back. So this is like what I said was all, this is kind of like kids, what they were learning and how they were learning. And then we got the field trip. So the field trip was on a Wednesday. Husker was generous to really kind of do the whole thing financially for us, which I think is huge credit to Husker. And then afterwards, I wanted the kids to say their responses. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but these are most of the data. So this year we kept it small. We just took my 2 elective classes. So my Merton computer science and electronics, because I wasn't sure how it was going to go. And I wanted to make sure that we didn't have an overwhelming number of students. I'll come back to those numbers towards the end, but so you can see we had 7th and 8th graders that went. This was the lab prep work. So they started with getting, that 6-volt data. We had to deal with it. So there was some teaching going on. So that's Brian right there, who was somebody that helped a lot with the students, kind of developed a lot of this as well. And then this is kind of the understanding students felt. So I mean, it is over on the right. I will be honest, the water day kind of threw some monkey wrench into some of my plans, connecting with some of this data on the students, which could be done much differently next year. But I think overall that's not bad. And then enjoyment wise, I think that's pretty good as well for enjoyment. So then we went into the lab. So this is the actual Husker lab that they do a lot of like tests on these actuators and like the real deal, like it's a real deal floor. So the kids got to be there. They made 3 of these rigs. These are just 2 pictures of the rigs that they got to use and kind of work with and experience. Then this is their understanding inside the lab. It's kind of more over to the right better. Then their enjoyment all over on the right. So I mean, after that's good stuff. This is the systems lab. So it's kind of harder to see, but there's a gentleman named Eric in the back going through other applications of breadboards. They were actually talking about Arduinos, which we are also using in this course. So they were making another connection to some of the other content. That was super awesome to see. So that was kind of just a demonstration. That section, understanding, I mean, there was some high level stuff there. So I mean, it's not too bad. And then enjoyment is still there as well. And then finally, we got to see like some laser arms, just way more of this equipment that we didn't take pictures of. But there's that, and then behind it is a fiber laser, which is different than our CO2 laser. And they actually laser etched pens like in seconds. Like it's a really awesome piece of equipment. But then the other thing here, they showed how they use AI to sort machine pieces. So like there's a laser etched barcode and serial code. They showed us under the AI camera and kids like how they read that, how they reject things, how they train the AI as well. So they kind of got their first introduction to that too, which was super cool to see.
They took the same pen that they had 2 different names laser etched on. They taught the camera in a few minutes with the kids. Here's a good pen, here's a bad pen. So they switched out the names and would pick it off and say, oh no, that's a bad pen. So if you're doing manufacturing, trying to make sure people are putting all the right parts in there. Using this type of technology quite often. Thanks.
So this was that section of that. Finally, we did the hospital floor tour. I don't have any pictures from that. But still covering the material. It was loud in there, so it was kind of hard to hear sometimes, but overall, the kids, the group that I was with seemed to enjoy it. Just like there. And then there's a picture of all of us. Some things that I want to add, there's next steps, is there anything to add? But, so next steps that I see, Austin and I were talking, could we maybe make this something for the entire 8th grade? Could we run it, you know, multiple days where we're able to then use the curriculum we already have, kind of dovetail in some of these other ideas that then we could take them to Husker as this capstone piece of like, you've done 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade STEAM work. Here's an actual real experience that you all get for all of our students. That's one idea. And then our other idea is that we have some other connects that we may want to bridge out to maybe test another idea like injection molding or another business in which we can then get the electives, getting some of those experiences to us. That's what we see as the next step. So we are still trying to pound our adults to give us their feedback. Magically, the kids gave us way faster feedback than the adults. But that's kind of what we see at the next steps.
Yeah, so you know, the grand vision, get it working, get a win, get a model of how we do this. And then you know, there's vision beyond vision of, you know, could we incorporate other aspects of the business to teach people about financing? Now you've made your product and you've designed your product. How do you manufacture it? How do you inventory it? How do you finance it? How do you do the business side of it? And how do you know, become an entrepreneur? There's some connections I have with like BizTown, whether or not we connect it with a little bit of BizTown principles. So there's a lot of big ideas, you know, there's walk around kind of strategy here for us.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
I'll let you. I mean, you had, we started talking about work dynamics and stuff.
We talked a lot about breaking it down, right? Breaking big complex things down a little bit more fundamental. So the math was set up to walk them through the different principles, and we tried to connect it to, you know, like you saw Brian with the wheel and showing them, it was literally showing them how pi, if we put one forward, right? It's created. So we rolled out the circumference on a wheel and they divided it by the diameter, and well, sure enough, we get pretty darn close to pi, right? But we built it up along the way. So I don't think every single kid nailed the math 100%, but there was still areas for them to learn it. We talked a lot more about like the prep up front, and the more they would get to see it up front, obviously. And then we had like probably over half of them just totally. I mean, they just, yep, we did it. You know, I was even surprised, like, you know, talking to Ava after and stuff, like how much she actually absorbed. She hadn't even been through the latest Steve stuff, you know, so it's to see how much. And then some of the questions at the end in the discussion, you hear like one or two questions and you're like, okay, like they really understood what was going on.
There were definitely some students that shined in ways that, you know, I've seen them shine in my class, but they were asking really thoughtful questions. Sometimes the engineers would be like, so those are really cool experiences to see that happen. And on the map, I didn't show you any of the comments because I had them comment on every single one. And some of them were different systems, but the funny ones were like, I thought the math was going to be so much harder than it was. So I mean, I think that if I was able to give it more time, like even just like 2 days or 3 days class periods where I could really do a full explanation of everything we did, I think most of our kids do it.
For the surprise, we got to do math, so we didn't. So there was that exact, I asked him to help me, so we got to do math, so it was awesome. We need to be careful how much we teach AI, because obviously you can learn a lot from you.
It's a good observation.
He would not tell me exactly what he did because he was actually too much big way to see.
Oh, this.
And the whole new way of telling me I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
But one of the things that we thought, as I was talking, is that it's always right. I maintain that most of the children they can be that big observant. They just, even for places, they know that they like cleaning, but they don't. all I do is look, but the opportunity is really still in people that are in. Let's start to see themselves. Really appreciate it.
I like this. Thank you. The idea that we also like to act. You can talk about class.
This was the Merton Computer Science and Electronics course. Because I just wanted to keep it to 7th and 8th grade because I was worried about the math. My other hangup was the 8th graders had all gotten circuit content within the regular STEAM course, whereas the 7th graders didn't. But I didn't feel that it was ready to be all 8th grade. That's how I chose that group. And the original vision was, Ames done this class, this, like how can we bridge all of that content? So I had shared 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade content with Austin to kind of develop this. So that's kind of why I see that it's the next step.
Thank you. Something.
Yep. Also a nice way of saying somebody came from us.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Dave, thank you so much. Thank you. So for the principal showcase this evening, again, it was highlighted at the last board meeting. Again, we wanted to highlight all the extra people, that are behind the scenes that things happen with children after school. So in the board packet, you'll see a list of all of our coaches, whether they were MAA, anyone who influenced our students here at Merton Intermediate School from the athletic standpoint. And again, a ton of, about 12 to 15 individuals, I'm sure, on there. And then also we highlighted all those activities that happen throughout. We have National Honor Society. We've got extra stuff with art club, spelling bee. Again, we're going to miss a whole bunch of them, but all those individuals give of their time and their talents to really bring an experience to our kids, very similar to what you saw here today, but outside of the day. So a big thank you to all those volunteers, many of them, who assisted in the development of our young people here at Merton Community School District. So big thank you. Big thank you.
And does that include those who are guiding our 8th graders through what is always, they're never too excited for everything.
Oh, no.
Those 8th graders are always calm and focused.
Of
Right
course,
through
yeah,
the end of the year.
should have put Mr. Newcomer down for that too as well. No, Becky Opperman and Carrie Nemchek continue to navigate our 8th graders and prepare for what's always a wonderful 8th grade promotion graduation ceremony here a little bit later in early June.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are we ready to call the order?
Peggy, do we have anybody for the community forum? Doesn't look like it. It's budget night. Everybody knows. So I think we're good to go.
All right, I call this meeting of the Board of Education of Merton Community School District to order on May 19th at 6:56 p.m. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag,
United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this meeting has been posted in all of the appropriate places, and we are ready for the approval of tonight's agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. So we are on then to that our consent agenda too, or do we need to do that?
Consent agenda. Yep.
That includes that?
Approval of
Okay, we have to
agenda.
do the approval for these.
But no, we need to do
Okay, yep.
approval of consent agenda.
All right.
Yep.
Next is to see if we need approval to run our consent agenda this evening. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Is there any, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Would like to say thank you to Autumn Conkle for her last 2 years. Really working towards that face experience in our new lab and done a great job at kickstarting it. So we'll miss her.
Thank you, Donna.
Mhm.
Any other discussion?
Also, just recognizing Joe Mamas for the $100 for the math and literacy night.
Need to do that at the administrator report anyway.
Oh, sorry.
All
did I
right,
jump
perfect. Yeah, thank you, Joe Moms.
Thank
Because that's for literacy night
Missed a
tomorrow.
page.
Yep, that's for literacy night tomorrow night. So
Any other discussion?
Nope.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Say nay. Motion carries. All right, we are on to delegations to be heard. We have any delegations to be heard this evening. Okay, we are on to our district administrators report.
sure, again, for our principal's report, again, thank you to all of our volunteers, our coaches and our advisors for this past year. Open records requests, just a few of them looking for staff information, pretty typical this time. Donation, thank you very much for Joe Mamas for our literacy and math night coming up tomorrow night. And our student showcase, again, another big thank you to David Wagner and Austin Schmidt for coming in and showing the partnership and the experience that our kids had last week. So just an amazing partnership and we look forward to that continuing to grow. So thank you very much. The other thing I did want to highlight is there was a kind of a school board of school boards of the Arrowhead system a couple weeks ago. Patrick was there and Justen was there too as well. Again, the point of that meeting was truly one is to continue to ground in school finance. And that was Jeff Gross. Again, a great hour presentation, went into a lot more detail than what we probably had to. But again, it's all there from a school finance standpoint. And then ultimately, after that, I did do a presentation, again, basically the same presentation that occurred a couple of years ago when this occurred at Swallow School, but ultimately about the process and the legality around a certain type of school consolidation. Again, when either merging two K-8s in our case, or K-12, about what that process is. So I literally went through WASB's presentation that highlighted state statutes, DPI language, and then ultimately some other feedback that was shared, whether it be for DPI, again, WASB or other school districts, about things to consider when possibly joining or pursuing a consolidation. So all the way from what's their debt, what's their state aid, what's the number of students, what kind of overhead do they have? And I kind of compared it to if you were to go back and date a little bit later in life, at times you would ask a lot different questions than if you did when you were in your 20s or in high school or whatever it was too. So just really getting to know the other school district is truly the most important thing. And then ultimately, having discussions, but it is in an ideal world, a minimum of 18 months, and that was highlighted by DPI and WASB. But sometimes it takes years, again, because there's many things that need to be figured out, typically even before you would even consider a resolution. And that's really the first part of it too as well. So complete informational, but again, just wanted to highlight that too as well. So thank you to Patrick and thank you for Justen. And again, it was truly informational. And again, we did share that out. And I know our community has seen that too as well.
So I wanted to speak to that tonight because some people saw Arrowhead's announcement of the meeting and took it as decisions are being made. And so Dean and I were at the first of the board's meetings where some of the questions were coming up. And one of the things he and I each shared was that from going to other presentations previously, would behoove that group to know more, everybody to be on the same knowledge place, because some of the questions were things that they didn't know from this type of presentation. So that was at the conclusion of that meeting, the board of boards meeting had determined that what everybody needed was more information.
Yep.
And so this was purely informational. The timeline of 18 months at the soonest is, if all the ducks are in a row and you've made a whole bunch of different decisions, that type of thing. So I think some people saw that and thought that within the next year and a half, we were going to be having discussions that they thought they had missed out on. And all it was information so that everyone who is these are reasonable questions to ask, would understand what our legislative responsibilities are and financial responsibilities. Patrick, is that what you took?
It was outstanding. Jeff and Ron both did very good jobs, especially being a new board member. Just the deep dive for both gentlemen was greatly appreciated.
I think there were 23 board members
Yeah.
there, something like that, but around 20 board members there too. So
Did
That's
the,
what that was there.
did the Journal Sentinel article portray what they actually
yeah,
talked about?
it did pretty well. The Freeman did too, and the Journal Sentinel did too as well. So yeah, I again, they just kind of pretty much took direct quotes from, you know, the presentation and things like that. A lot of people want to know a lot more about it. And I'm like, no, you need to just go talk to your local school district then, because that ultimately is how we left it if school districts wanted to consider, they can have a conversation about what possible next steps, whether that's directing superintendents or wherever it might be. So, but I know it is not on our agenda this evening, but you know, if it's something that people wanted to talk about, obviously we always can. I did highlight that the state budget typically drives a lot of this too as well, because there's a lot of unknowns at this time. But and again, it was interesting at my our spring business conference last week. Both you know, people from the state and DPI said, remember, consolidation doesn't save you. It's not a saving method. It truly has to be a joint partnership, because it's great for both communities, great for kids. It is not to save you. It is truly a proactive way to continue to do great things for kids and support your local communities.
Thank you.
So, yep, thank
And
you.
it was the only night I could see Tessa's show, so I didn't come to the meeting.
Watch the video. It's there. Yep.
All right, thank you for that. Anything else, Ron, from you?
Nope, that'll be good.
Okay, could we go to committee reports, please, starting with the finance?
Sure. Finance Committee. We're going to hear a little bit more about the Finance Committee a little bit later, but one of the things we first did was we did look at our quarterly reports. Everything is looking good. Again, when we go back to previous years, that's kind of always our benchmark, because we've always been real successful, making sure we hit our budgets and leave a little bit of surplus at the end there. We're really, really right on. So we're looking really, really good there. The other piece is again, it's that time of year where we start to think about the 25-26 budget, which I'll be presenting very high level. And again, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we'll wait for that probably later in the meeting. So, yeah.
Student achievement.
Sure. Our Student Achievement Committee talked about kind of did a couple things. One is took a look at again, I wasn't there either from that standpoint, couldn't make it. But ultimately, we did take a look at our GT program, our Gifted and Talented program, gave an update. Not only about all the things that we've accomplished this year, but also a few things that we're looking at to continue to explore and to expand next year too as well. So that was one of the pieces, another Act 20 piece as usual from that standpoint too. I don't know what else was on the agenda. Let's see here. Do it.
See.
Talent.
Professional learning plans.
Oh, professional learning plans. So yeah, a big thank you to Maria and actually our principals too as well. As every Monday we meet as an instructional team. Lori Larson kicks in there too, and Jim participates as well. But ultimately, we put a year's plan together, all the way from, you know, summer academy to our new teachers to Wednesday learning to the 6 professional development days that we have. Just a tremendous amount of work, and again, a big thank you to Maria, who really leads and guides those discussions. So you'll see a really big spreadsheet and again, greatly appreciate all the work that she does, but that pretty much kind of forecasts all the things we're going to be doing and thinking about next year. So obviously subject to change, we do pivot when needed, but again, we've got a really good solid plan, and that's the foundation of where we're going.
That run I presume you take feedback from each year's, like say the summer academy and that kind of thing, and apply it in the next year. So what are some of the adjustments you're making based on feedback from faculty and staff?
Sure. Well, one of the pieces that I know we're making is on our new teacher days. So again, Marie and I, we're going to be breaking that down a little bit more, doing some more mandated work versus, because we're like, geez, I thought all the way from, well, we made it volunteer, whether to open up your 403B so the district will contribute, you know, up to $750. Well, we've had 3 staff members come to us and say, what's this all about? I was like, oh my goodness, how did we miss this? Well, it was optional because we don't make it optional. So we also extended a day of new teacher based on their feedback. And again, bringing more of that grade level team together too as well. One of the pieces we do struggle getting feedback from our staff. And again, that was one of the things, and we are going to ensure that that participation is much higher this year. And again, giving time, hey, we're going to do the feedback. And it's interesting that, Dave and Austin, when they were presenting, Dave was like, I got my kids' feedback right away, but yet we're still waiting for that adult side. We're not going to wait for the adult side. We're going to really push that forward too as well. So again, we're a little light on that feedback. The other pieces this upcoming year is pretty much going to be driven by our strategic plan. Again, this year is a lot of, if I was a primary school teacher, for instance, it was Act 20 work, right? This upcoming year is going to look a little bit different. We'll still do some curricular work. We've got some math adjustments. We're going to be, researching some science stuff too as well. So one of the pieces that we're looking at is that summer academy feedback. And again, from the working with the board, I think last year we only had about 60%, not even 60%. I think it was really small with feedback on that too as well. So we're still looking forward to, but the biggest feedback is our new teachers. But they told us this year too as well.
And in looking to get feedback in areas that you're lower on feedback, what are your plans for increasing feedback?
Basically mandating it. When we say mandating it, to say, hey, this is done. Okay, before you leave, we want you to fill out this survey. Thank you very much. When you're done, you're done. So instead of letting them say, hey, because we give them time. I was in part of the agenda is to say, hey, this last 30 minutes of the day, this is what we want you to do. So we got a plan.
So having it done before everybody leaves in the college world is exactly what we had to do, because otherwise, once we went to online, when you filled them out, people took the test. But if it's online and you can do it whenever, it
gets lost.
Yeah, exactly.
It really does.
Yep. Everybody has good intentions.
Yep.
Doesn't happen. All right. How about personnel? Anything else from student achievement?
Nope.
How about personnel and policy?
Sure. We met about a week ago, and we first previewed what you're going to see for first draft, which is a WASB required Act 20 3rd to 4th grade promotion policy. Boilerplate, basically it highlights that you will have a plan leading up till 3rd grade. And if you still have a plan between 3rd and 4th grade, there's going to be a team. You're going to be on a plan, and the only way to exit that plan throughout the system is if you are proficient on the test. So we know some students, for instance, if you have an IEP in the area of reading, that may be very, very difficult. Doesn't mean we don't stop trying. But again, it's just basically what support is going to be given. And ultimately, it's a partnership between the district and the family on that promotion policy too as well. So it is a first read. Again, we'll take a look at it a little bit later in the meeting.
I'll talk about that.
Okay. Yep. The other piece is you'll see the student handbook drafts. Again, thank you to Mr. Blessington and Mr. Newcomer for giving some feedback around that. You'll see basically in the primary school, you'll see the behavior matrix in Merton Way that Mr. Blessing and his team have been working to finalize. And then also you'll see the new tardy policy that Mr. Newcomer and his staff have been working for too as well. So Nicole, there was that one piece of feedback, whether it was quarterly, semester, it is quarterly, and we did add that piece too as well.
That's the tardy portion.
For the tardy portion, yep.
Perfect.
So it would be each quarter, each class. From that
Thank you.
Yep. The other piece that was brought up was Mr. Kent brought it up as saying, what about e-bikes, these e-scooters? It's like, that's a really good question. So this past week, I was at, basically it was a WASBO conference with school business officials as well as facility and buildings and grounds directors. I said, these people have to have the answers to these things. They're like, we don't know. We don't know. So we're going to continue to look at that. What we're hearing is what's the rules on the street in your village. It's very difficult to kind of highlight a speed, like for instance, if we're going to do something, ultimately we would have to say, bikes of all kinds, scooters of all kinds need to be walked between the hours of 8:15 and 4:15, for instance. Then you have the enforcement. I mean, you've got a lot of different things going into that, but still people are kind of wrestling with it. But it was a good comment that as they get more and more popular and as they come zooming through, and again, if you're up here this evening on a beautiful day like it is today, they're all over. Kids are just having a ball with them. So, but what does that mean for us during the school day to keep everybody safe and particularly keep them safe, but ultimately all of our pedestrians, families and things like that too. So more to come on that about what that might look
And our
like.
bike rules are already that you're supposed to walk them.
Our bike rules is we ask people to walk them,
Our
correct?
scooter rules are, we don't have scooter rules.
We don't have school rules. So more to come on that. I guess we'll continue to take a look at it and see how everybody else reacts to. So. And then finally, we had our employee handbook. A big thank you. We probably had, Nicole, a dozen people come on out.
Turnout.
Yeah, it was a really good turnout. And so what you see here is what some of the proposals were. You'll see a little bit later in the first drafts, our support staff came out in opposition to the increased possibility of liquidated damages during the school year and things like that. And the committee did pull that back. They struck that down. So that's not being moved forward this evening. The other piece that we heard, there are two other pieces. One was the proposal to possibly pay our teaching staff who are on 24 pays their July and August opportunities and their money that they've been earned. That comes from recommendations from WRS, the Wisconsin Retirement System, as well as our auditors, just to get money off your books. And again, we do things creatively to show that it's been spent. But yet we still have it. They said, well, it's in 75% of the other school districts around that we found, give the teachers the money ahead of time. We heard, and again, I kind of did sprinkle that out during my some of my grade level and my subject level chats, and it was met with 50, and so, but there was extreme opposition. When I say extreme, there wasn't anybody there who was like, yeah, I want to do this. Again, all the way from budgeting, tax concerns, and again, the tax concerns, taxes are what they are. We would end up, just to make sure we showed people that, hey, they got all their money and everything was the same, was to pay them 4 more times on June 20th or any day ahead of June 30th. So, but again, because of the opposition, and again, we're not required to, there may be a time when auditors come and say, or state statutes change where, hey, you have to do this. You have to get this money to your people because it has to be spent before June 30th, which is the end of our fiscal year. So until then, it seems like our staff really enjoys this from a business standpoint. We'll continue to do what it is we do, work with our auditors, but also Justen brought up a really nice point about for those people who are possibly retiring in the future, to kind of plant that seed that they may want to switch from 24 pays to 20 pays. So their last paycheck actually is June 20th. So then their actual last day of work is proven to be the last day of school instead of possibly August 20th, and us kind of, going back and forth with the state about making sure people get their pensions. And
So when
stuff.
that happens, it does make it harder for people to draw their pensions on time.
It makes it harder. Yep. There's a whole bunch of, right? Ron, you said they get paid on the 20th. Yes, but their last day was the 6th. No, you paid them on the 20th, which means 30. So it's a little bit more difficult. So I'll be a little bit more proactive with people who are towards that side of life and letting them know that, just to alleviate a hiccup a little bit later down the road.
And there's no requirement that we do the same thing for everyone. Some people could choose to be paid out entirely in June and everyone else.
Correct. Yes. State statute actually says we're supposed to. We're allowed, we give them the option if they want to go through 24. So yeah. So we pulled that. So you won't see that in the first draft of the recommendations, part 2. The other part that was discussed a lot of it was our paid time off program. So as we know, a year ago, the Policy and Personnel Committee and the board spent significant time on that, gathering feedback from our staff. Some people, came and expressed some concerns about ultimately not being able to access their FMLA bank without an FMLA, incident or an activity or a qualifying event. So that was one of the pieces that was discussed about, would like some opportunity to, once you've exhausted your 10 days of sick time and your 2 personal days, to be able to freely access some of your excess days that you've stored up over time. So in particular, some people who have discussed that to say, hey, because we do pay out people, it was highlighted and we shared with our staff, our new PTO program, we paid out almost $21,000 in 403B for unused sick time. So, it does work. Again, like it was said before at the Policy and Personnel Committee. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what we had before? I believe so. And I think it all depends on where you are at, whether you're support staff, full-time, part-time. it's so unique, but again, it's very difficult to build everybody's happy in a system when you have almost 100 employees. So things went a little bit long, from that standpoint. There was no recommendation that came, or no official recommendation. My recommendation would be to keep rolling with it from an administrative standpoint. Let's see this play through. Those situations are always going to come up where they're unique. And we work with all of our staff the best we can, but also have to be, consistent with a lot of that shared out too as well. So again, we can talk more about that if that's something that the board would like to talk about when we get to their new business. All right.
Okay, then we are moving on to new business. Everything, we didn't have anything else from
Nope,
personnel.
that's it.
Moving on to new business. Our first point is the 25-26 preliminary and proposed budget presentation.
You bet.
Discussion.
All right. That's why nobody showed up.
All right, are we coming out here?
Yep, if you could for a little bit. Yep. So again, thank you very much. Again, thanks to the finance committee, Patrick and Dean, and actually Justen was there too as well to take a review. So I'm going to be worse than a weatherman or a weather person, as in what I'm showing you right now is wrong, all wrong. So since we met even on the finance committee, things have changed just because of factors and variables and things. So, but the district does take this opportunity. We basically present our budget 3 times. We have one in May, where in a little bit, we're going to ask the board to adopt a preliminary budget that basically authorizes us to start spending July 1st, because we have a new fiscal cycle. Then we have our annual meeting, which is September 9th, which again, we sharpen the pencil. We're a little bit closer. We've got our enrollment, which is a huge key variable. Also, the state budget will be hopefully finalized by then, but we'll see. So that's another indicator about how we're doing and financially and presentation and that. And then ultimately at the end of October, the board will adopt a budget, a final budget, adopt a levy, given all of the factors that we know like that. So tonight we've got goals, timelines, factors. There it is. We're going to talk about a little bit about everything. Our goals of the budget are always simple. We are going to follow our strategic plan. We are going to maintain academic excellence while inspiring curiosity and personal growth. Those are the key indicators that we really want to make sure that we're moving forward to. We are very fiscally responsible. We want to be as open as possible. This is actually the 4th time now, or before we adopt the budget, it'll be the 4th time we talk about budget. We want to maintain great buildings. This is the largest investment in our community that our community has. So we want to make sure that our buildings and grounds maintenance is all up to shape. And then ultimately, we want to support that learning and teaching and operations side of the district. So we are in May right now. So we are preliminary budgeting. The goal, it's highlighted, is July 1st. We are supposed to get a state aid estimate. Okay. Last Friday, I was with DPI. They said, we don't know if that's even going to come out because it's probably going to be inaccurate unless something changes in Madison with the politics of the budget right now. They're saying, I think state requires us to issue something, but it's going to be asterisk to say, don't count on it. So, but when we say state aid, again, you'll see this in a little bit. State aid, there's the pot, right? The revenue limit. A portion of it is taxpayers, a portion of it is state. Whatever the state doesn't pick up, the taxpayers kick in. So usually July 1st, it's within about 2 to 3% accuracy. 2 to 3%. This one they're saying it's out the door. Who knows? So it's going to be very difficult for a tax levy standpoint. Again, that state aid does not control the revenue limit. It just controls the tax levy. We'll talk more about that a little bit. Like I highlighted before, September 9th, we've got our annual meeting, 3rd Friday count, which is 1/3 of the variables, but what we're looking at. October, we've got our equalized property value, October 1st. Certification of state aid. Remember when I said July 1st is estimate? They have to certify by the 15th. Have to certify by October 15th. And then our October board meeting, which is usually a little bit later in October, to give us all that opportunity to put everything together, certifies the final levy as well as the revenue limit about what it is that we are going to be able to spend. Okay, 25, 26 budget factors. What are we considering when we take a look at our budget? Right now, like I've highlighted, we are in the beginning of a biennial budget. Madison right now, their, Joint Finance Committee has heard, went around the state in 4 different locations. The vast majority of all the conversations focused around public education. So that was, DPI through, or not DPI, our advocacy through WASB and SAA, threw out some statistics about everybody's talking about education. Now, we are assuming $325 per pupil. The Supreme Court did uphold that Governor Evers' veto pen last biennial budget when he said 325 for 400 years was legit. That was within his power as a governor. So with that, obviously, there was one political party not real excited about that. So that is pretty much what we're expecting, just 325. There was conversations about raising the floor. If you remember in the last biennial, for those of us that were on the board, why did my taxes go up? Well, because the per pupil went from 10,000 to 11,000. Okay, there was discussion to go from 11,000 to 12,000 or 11,000 to 12,000. Okay, that has calmed a little bit, mostly because it was all local problem as well. So you're going to get some friction between the governor and their Joint Finance Committee here. You're going to hear that more and more. Special education, there's some discussion, at least there seems to be agreement there. The special education piece is right now, it is not sufficient. They put about 33% of what they expect. This year, we're going to get about 30%. So we're not even going to meet that 33% on what the state has kind of said, because there's some provision and then there's allocation provision. So, but there seems to be some agreement around special education. We are not counting on anything. Now, if any, and you'll see why, if we go from 30% reimbursement, 40 to 50 or to 60, that money is more money towards special education, which lowers our transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 27 for special education expenses. So, more to come on that. That affects all kids, and that's why we're really excited about that. For every 10%, you can think of about $100 per pupil. So it would be almost $100,000, just under $100,000 of new revenue limit that we'd be able to spend. We are only assuming 15 students, again, very conservative. Are we probably at 15 already? Yes, probably, because for people are starting to move in. Putting in a very conservative 15 student increase to our number. Increased operating costs. Strategic plan, we know that we market adjusted. We talked about all this, and a little bit we're going to be approving our letters of appointment, which reflect a market adjustment on many of our positions. Salary increase right around 5.1. The new teacher compensation and loyalty schedule, which was adopted. Health insurance. The nice part is we are through. We're January 1 to December 31st for health insurance. Meaning, when we budget an increase, it's only for half of the year. So. But again, right now we've got about 15% in that budget, which ultimately is a 30% rebate. The other piece being self-insured. If you ever step away from being self-insured, ultimately you probably have about 3 months worth of claims that you need to have in reserve. Just in case you step away and do something different that way too as well. Then you got transportation supplies, 3%, the normal 3%, because CPI was at 2.87. The other pieces, we don't know open enrollment and incoming enrollment. So we'll see. The only other federal funds that we're losing this year, the last of the COVID dollars, Imes, is effective. Basically it's about instruction. We helped offset our literacy adoption there a year ago. So what are we planning on doing in the budget? Curriculum and instruction, we're going to continue to enhance K-5. You've heard a lot about Act 20. Bless our staff who went through all that at the same time going through a literacy adoption. So this year, our staff actually gets to catch their breath a little bit. Math and literacy interventions. So again, another big focal point is how do you continue to move the needle on our student growth, ultimately taking a look at report card, taking a look at subgroups, and really honing in, making sure that we're getting all the things that our kids need to be able to do that. Again, we're going to be hiring another reading teacher. And getting significantly investing in some more literacy math intervention materials for our interventionists too as well. Then we got parking lots, resealed, patch and stripe a little bit later this summer, carpet and paint, and a couple classrooms, technology switches. Thank you very much to Mr. Binney. But this upcoming year, and what else are we forecasting for? What are we working on? K-8 science. When I am here a year from now, or right around in April, when Maria starts to talk about her science adoption, I'm going to tell you science adoptions are expensive. Right? You need a lot of stuff. You need stuff. So again, as we continue to close this year's books out, we plan for next year, and right around November, we'll be like, okay, Maria, how much do you think this is going to cost? And it will be a cornerstone of next year's budget. We've got a 4K review and adoption. We've done a lot of great work on this as well. Unfortunately, the last couple of years have been super busy with math and Act 20 and stuff. This year we have committed. So again, it won't be a huge adoption cost, but again, another focal point of our learning here. And then the Merton Values review and adoption, top 4 adoption, whatever that might look like for 26, 27. All of our curricular adoptions will be starting in August. Again, will be led by Charsky and a team of collaborating individuals. Dave and I have already talked about that, and that's going through his budget process. And actually, it was interesting because I was going to comment, but when we were talking about all the things he wanted to do, I was like, "You lost." He can get a physics degree. I'm like, I don't know what, I mean, been out of it a little bit, but it's all electronic. I said, Dave, what do you need? And actually, we were able to make some of those investments yet this year to be able to do that too. So, but through our budget process, I sit down with basically almost every department. If they want to chat and do something unique, Dave always takes me up on that and says, Ron, here's my plan. This is what we're doing. So yeah. Again, we also wanted a new bandsaw and stuff like that for some. So, yep. All right. Here's how much money we have to spend right now, ultimately. So our revenue limit, and a review on the revenue limit is resident membership. That is a 3-year rolling average. Okay. For the Merton Community School District, a district who continues to grow, when you replace a large number with a smaller number, that moves. Okay. We're literally looking at a 31 increase on our revenue limit. Okay. This is why you don't hear us talking about a lot of cuts or any cut. I mean, we're growing. Obviously, we've got to maintain, you know, our fiscal infrastructure and things like that. But understand, we're up 31. If you're a local school district, you're doing good if you're solid, if you're just steady. It's predictable, but a lot of them around are starting to go down. And that's when you start to hear about, you know, whether K-12 are closing buildings and things like that. Just they can't support the same operation for the least number of students they have. So ultimately, resident membership times per pupil, that per pupil is increasing 325. So the number is 11,625 or 650 for next year. So we're going to take 890 times 11,650. We don't have any one-time or recurring exemptions because you only get that if you're declining enrollment. They don't give us anything for increasing enrollment. Ongoing, we don't have any of those ongoing, and our revenue limit authority. So ultimately in Fund 10, again, the pie of state dollars and local taxpayer dollar, that combination right now we anticipate to be $10,611,000. Again, that will change. Certainly will change. Okay, we talked about the state aid. It's an estimate. Okay, we are, again, when you increase students, obviously the state can give you a little bit more dollars from that standpoint just because of the formula. But Merton has as you know, our property growth continues to grow up, right? In our budget, I budgeted 10% property increase. Okay, that 10%, probably like last year, half of it was called net new construction. Basically homes that weren't here a year ago. Okay, why is that important? That's important because it's not 10% inflation on all of us people who have been existing here and who have lived here before. You have added a 5% increase and then a 5% increase in everybody else's houses. So it doesn't equate to a 10% property valuation. Okay, but again, once you have more property, the state looks at you and says, oh, you can afford to pay more school taxes. Okay, last year we were aided by what we call MPS money. Okay, a year ago, they were going through some audits and collected too much money. They had to give some back. So we gathered about $89,000 for them. Now, I will continue to monitor this year's budget because there are some things that we can do after sitting down and working with DPI, working with CISA 5 and making sure that all of our ducks in a row is we need to spend more money. What that means is we have a healthy fund balance. When we say spend money, they say move money from Fund 10 to Fund 46. Make it look like you spend it, pay your taxes, right? It's like a Roth IRA. And that way the state says, oh boy, you need more state aid because you have a higher per pupil cost. You want to continue to push that up. Right now, we're at 86% of the state average. If 100% is state average about where the state is, we're at 86% of that. So we have the opportunity to take a look at our cash flow and to put some money into Fund 46. And we'll do that in July. Once we get closer to this end of the fiscal year, continue to keep the finance team involved. But don't be surprised this year if I come to you in the finance committee to say, hey, we would like to make a larger investment and shift from Fund 10 to Fund 46 this year. And this is why. It's almost a 50-50 for every dollar you put in, you get 50 cents worth of state aid, is what the state is telling us right now. So again, we'll do our cash flow analysis, making sure we're solid there. In the past, last year, I think we set aside 200,000. Again, when we take a look at our surpluses, this year could be, up to 500, 600 or whatever that might be. And again, just shifting from Fund 10 to an assigned fund balance in Fund 46 for facility only. Okay, we're talking those one-time projects. So yeah, so more to come on that. But again, that's the only lever we have on state aid. Other than that, it's just kind of a hope and a prayer thing. And this year, July 1st, we don't even have a really good estimate. Okay, tax levy estimates. Again, complete estimate. You put everything together, early mill rate of 3.42. Very early mill rate. Okay, property values go up. That'll drop that. But if we get more kids, again, there's so many things that we don't know. Less state aid, more state aid, we don't know. We'll continue, and as soon as we know all these factors, and particularly at the next annual meeting, and I'll keep the board up to date about what's going on too as well. So last year's mill rate was right around 3.46. All right, revenue estimates. Now you're to say, Ron, you said that we had 10,611,000 to work with, 870 to be exact. Nope, we get some other stuff. Obviously, we ask for school fees, some technology, regular stuff. We do get other state revenues in the form of per pupil aid, categorical aids, and things like that. Notice on there, you won't see much federal dollar here as well. The only federal dollars that we will receive, if we receive any, is Title II, which is for professional development. Okay. And this past year was $8,000. Broke it down to 7 in the budget. We get something. Not quite sure. So again, tax levy, state aid, open enrollment. So again, estimated revenues of right around 12,515. Expenses. Okay, obviously you're going to see salary benefits. Fund 27 transfer. I'm going to go back to what Rebecca said about special education. If we get an increase in special education reimbursement, that will go from 7.1% down to maybe 6% or 5%. Right now, we're scheduled to do about a $950,000 transfer. So almost $1 million out of $12 million. Right now, it's planning on going to special education costs. The majority of that is person. Lori does an outstanding job with her staff, making sure we have what we need for our kids and not overinflating or anything else like that going through the process, and really trying to control that too as well. So you can see where there's not a lot of, and again, we've got private school vouchers that are, and it's in and out. When we really take a look at things, we're about 7.5% of our budget to do stuff with outside of contracted service, getting the lights on, like that. Right now, we are balanced. Okay, we are balanced until Maria walks through the door every Tuesday. Basically, Jim's right before, so he butters me up a little bit. But again, all of our facility projects right now are in. It's not a really heavy facility, budget. It isn't. The roof replacement is in this year's budget. So again, we were able to. Hopefully, we should be able to take that out of $24, $25. But proposed $100,000 into Fund 41, which has to happen at the annual meeting. Again, If we wanted to do something more, again, that is another expense that is expensed this year and set aside. And then we do have contingency for staff, whether we need to pop a section, special education, things like that, whatever it might be from the viewpoint. Okay, and then we talked about this before, our fund balance, again, very healthy. Again, we're not audited yet, so I just kind of pulled up our last year's audited. So we're right around 42.56 or $4.2 million of fund balance. Again, fund balance is not just money we have in the bank. It is there, but it's used for short term because we get two or three tax payments a year. And so when you operate $12 million and you only get paid, 3 times a year, you got to have a good cash. And we're really, really solid there. Then we've talked about 41 and 46. That I think has increased a little bit because we did put some things in a year ago, but we're right around that $1.5 million. So the nice part about this too is the district does earn almost $150,000 in interest. A $12 million budget. Each year. Just by interest. So that's really positive too. We're doing really well. A lot of variables. I apologize that everything's wrong, but again, this gives you a very brief snapshot on what it is that we're going to try to do. In your board packet, you will see again detailed budget about how much in salaries. It's all Woofer codes, exciting stuff. But then you also do see the revenue limit calculations, or the 3-year rolling average kicks up. We've added 325. You'll see the charter school payments in there too as well that are anticipated from a year ago. The one piece in there, the independent charter school, that is not on the revenue limit. That just needs to be accounted for, which is another $150,000. So our charter schools now are right around $400,000. Again, it doesn't take money away from us. It is levied, and then it's just expense stuff. That's why you'll see that on all of our budgets. It's many than just even sure. So, any questions about preliminary budget? Okay, yeah. Right now, to be honest with you, no. Yep, even with our open enrollment numbers, if everybody comes, we're in great shape. Yeah. Yep. What we would feel is still within really, really good school or our class size. Yep. But some years all of a sudden everybody shows up, they're a second grader. You're like, holy cow. Boom. And that's happened before in the past, as we know. And so we'll see what happens this year. So far, it's been a nice little sprinkle. It's been really nice. All right, Pete.
So they don't go to.
Yep.
People.
You got it. Yep. So if nothing happens by October 15th, I do believe, again, they can legislatively move it if they want, from what I understand, but it would just roll last year's budget forward, which is 325, which is what we're expecting. Yep. No increase to categorical, no increase to special. The conversation piece that I think there's some momentum for would be the special education piece. But again, we're planning on nothing to occur. So we're just, for instance, if there's stalemate in Madison, we roll forward, we're ready to go. Correct. Yep. Last budget cycle didn't go as well, especially at the night hour. So we're still waiting to hear from, any of the literacy money from Act 20, because that's still money that's budgeted for, but hasn't been released yet as well in some of those areas. And keep everybody updated. You'll get all the information too in your email. All right. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Steve. Right.
All right, so we're moving on to the adoption 25-26 proposed budget.
Yep. So as presented, again, what you see here for the proposed budget is basically kind of a mini budget that gets produced, and that would then basically be cast forward into the annual meeting. And so you'll see this here coming up again too. So just again, the best guess we have right now. So just looking for a motion to approve the preliminary 25-26 budget as presented.
Also move.
Motion and a second for approving the 25-26 preliminary budget. Any discussion? So to reiterate, Ron, we are approving we're approving something that we get more information about later.
You bet. Exactly.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the 25-26 budget, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We are moving.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are moving on to the first review of the 25-26 employee handbook.
So what you have there, let me pull it up here, is the recommendations that came from the Policy and Personnel Committee. The employee handbook is something that we then would approve next month. This is the first review. So what you have there is basically, some dates and updates and, some cancellation there. That's about it. So, and I am going to recommend us moving again, the policy team didn't move it forward, but I would recommend that we not move forward the July and August pays being paid out in June.
Let's see. Run, so this is discussion.
Yep, discussion,
There's
yep.
no motion here because
Yep.
this is not an action.
Mhm.
This is the first read. Thinking about the 3rd to 4th grade promotion, you had indicated that something that you had said made it sound like this might be difficult for some, I think it was, I don't know if it's children or
We'll
families.
talk about that in the last agenda item.
Is that coming up?
Yep, that's coming up. That's not employee handbook.
Oh, sorry. The wrong page.
I had asked that discussion about increasing employee share on health insurance, and that didn't get brought up at that handbook session, which would be in the handbook.
It's in the handbook, correct. Yep, right now it's 13.6%.
Where these increases every year heavily on the taxpayer. 15% every year. And I would, ask for 1 or 2% increase going to personnel here. Increase. They're at 12.
13.4, 13.6. One of the two. Somebody's 13.4, somebody's 80, 13.4, 80, 86.6, and vice versa. Basically, it's 13 and 86, 13 and 87.
But it didn't get discussed at committee level, but I think we need to keep that on our radar. We need to pass on a little bit of the cost of the insurance, so it's not all on the backs of taxpayers.
Dean, what we can do, again, we can discuss it now for it to be effective July 1st. That could be something that the board, as we take a look at insurance renewals, to be brought back. And again, that the employee handbook can be changed at any time with the first read and the second. So as we think about that next insurance renewal, last year we had an 8% increase. So which was very good for our first year here. So as we continue to really monitor and see how we're doing, that's something that we can take up when we take a look at insurance renewals for this upcoming year, certainly.
And the real world is in business, the employees are paying a much higher percentage of the insurance than what happens here.
Will we have a June policy meeting? Personal.
We can.
Well, our next renewal isn't until next January 1st.
It's January 1st.
Right.
January
Okay.
1st is our next renewal, correct?
When
Yeah.
is our next meet and confer?
Probably in the fall.
So since it's before the renewal, can we make
Absolutely.
sure, put that on as one of the topics, just so we have the opportunity to hear?
Certainly.
What
Yep.
Some of those numbers might.
I can get those numbers accurate. So for instance, when we take a look at the renewal, say it's 10% or whatever, I can say, okay, if we increase by 1%, this is what the employee cost increase, it's like that too. So Yeah, so we can certainly tie that back. Nothing's holding us into that 13.4, 13.
And have the insurance bids included anything that we can do to reduce our cost overall as an institution?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. So we will be continuing to monitor that as we take a look at, again, another year of claims data, which has been very, very helpful all the way from whether you can, because we're self-insured, which means that we drive the program. Okay?
Which is fairly new.
Which is fairly new, right? Yeah, because we used to be in a fully insured, complete open market, basically for healthcare, when we were with United Healthcare. Because we control the plan. We did this a year ago or right around in January when we said we took a look at the numbers, took a look at the number of employees who were affected by what we would call the Aurora plan. Met individually with them. We made the difficult decision to say, hey, this is why. We helped them transition into the plan where everybody else does too. The next steps to that is really honing in down even into our own network and saying, okay, who's offering great quality care? What's the metrics? We work with the business healthcare group. Who's the great quality metrics? Those providers at a really great price, because you don't want that continued referral of, you don't want to keep going and get your knee scoped. Who's getting it right the first time? More than likely too. So, we're going to be taking a look at everything. Everything will be on the table for this renewal. Right now, things are trending really good, but our claims data is, still 3 months out from where we usually are. Obviously, bills take a while to get paid, but we're going to be taking a look at, and we may be recommending some changes to our program, to our planning, whether that's, again, taking a look at, in a self-insured environment, do we pretend we're like the private sector where if you do have a spouse who has insurance, they have to go there? I mean, there's a lot of things that I think are going to be on the table for this upcoming renewal as health insurance continues to increase and eat up more of our budget.
Have we been offered anything like through my healthcare? If I had to get a preventative, if I do a blood panel every year, they take so much off of my
We certainly can. You can start at any percentage that you would like. You'd like to be research based in that. And again, we continue to work with our, the business healthcare groups and TiVo and the insurance center to say, okay, you can reduce your premium. So for instance, let's just say a lot of people will start at 25. You can reduce your premium to get down to 13 or whatever it is. If you go get your preventative care, you have 2 dental cleanings, you have, flu shot, whatever it is, you can certainly do that. You want it to be research. We used to be your biometrics. We'd have them right in here. We would give them the sheet of paper, and then right out there would be all the sheets of paper. Thanks, check, and I got it. So Arrowhead does that. And again, working with Jeff Gross. I mean, we're even investigating on-site healthcare as well, too, to see if that's something. But I do want to give it to our staff. Our staff is doing a great job. They've been very responsive. I mean, we had we tried to have an employee engagement meeting when we had the well issue, but again, our primary care and our urgent care and our emergency room care is very low, which is great. So when we have these conversations about on-site clinics, we're looking at it like, wait a second, this is going to you're going to charge me, $50 per belly button or whatever for this clinic. I barely spend $50 right now on primary care per month per member. So having the data is really driving it. Another piece that we did is working with our staff on some of those biomeds. So, the things you see on TV. So carving them out and saying, you have to get it from here. Working with employees to get them signed up to making sure. And the district gets basically 3/4, 75% of the savings back to us. So our staff has been wonderful. They really have. But they've been, when I say reason, because we just show them, the Aurora was an easy numbers game. They're like, oh, really? Yeah. So they've been really champs too. But it is spending a lot of our time on that.
Have we touched base with any of the feeder schools that are in our same situation and how it's going with them, what they're doing?
Yeah. See, we're more aggressive. I will say we're much more aggressive than other districts, much more aggressive.
In looking at other options or?
In looking at, like, for instance, the other feeder schools still allow Aurora. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we took the aggressive approach to say in a self-insured environment, I'm just going to use the baby as an example, 40 or 20. Same care, same identical. And so
That's what being paid. You should say what those numbers mean.
Oh, numbers. So basically, we were being charged $40,000 for Aurora and 20,000 for Pro Health or Freighter or other providers. So-
Or to be uncomplicated.
An uncomplicated, apples to apples, knee surgeries, same thing. So we take a look at all the way from primary care as well. So what we found is Aurora doctors were not giving us the discounts that Pro Health and Freighter and Ascension were giving, because the business healthcare group, I've mentioned them several times, they're like our negotiators for this. And so they've just said, if you can go there, but what we did last year was our employees were paying more. That decrement, though, was not nearly making up for the difference between a Pro Health doctor and an Aurora doctor. So our goal is to get Aurora back in the network. But when we took a look at a disruption analysis, again, this data is just fascinating. When you take a look at a disruption analysis, it was, less than 10% of our care. So then we have the difficult conversation with our staff, and everybody's like, okay, if it's 10%. Same way with, with a narrow network with our children, our dependents who are out of state. And we have maybe, 5 or 6 out of, 80 full-time employees that are affected by that. I stand up here and say, I get it, because it's me too, but we have to make these difficult decisions. So we work with that person. You get a primary care virtual, all ER, all, emergency care is covered around the country, certainly. But if you have to have something planned, you need to do it here with our doctor. So again, our staff has been wonderful. So we've kind of taken that more so aggressively, Nicole, than other people. And that's how you get an 8% savings, an 8% increase compared to a double digit. All good questions. Thank you. Okay. Again, that's first review. We can continue to talk about it next time in June, which is a quick turnaround. June 9th, we'll approve that.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the first review of the 2025-26 student handbook revisions.
Yep. Again, kind of highlighted those in the policy. Just if anybody has any feedback, feel free to send it either Bob, Steve, or my way, or the policy and personnel committee.
Can I ask about the behavior matrix? Putting that together?
Sure.
Bob, could you just tell us a little bit about the process for that? You find it makes those conversations seem less like this is focused on this person and more like here is the system in which we work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Very.
Seeing that, let's move to approving the 25-26 letters of appointment. This is the amount.
Yep. So just again, thank you to the school board. You guys met in closed session, reviewed this for several hours. So really appreciate your time and attention to this too, as well, in response to our strategic planning initiative for this upcoming year. So, so what you have here is the recommendation for the letters of appointment ultimately, which then would be created, which would then be binding for us next fall as we go into that. So one of the reasons why we do this too at this time of year is to avoid any unemployment exposure, because we are committing to our staff from that standpoint too as well. So just looking for a motion to approve the 25-26 letters of appointments as presented.
We have a motion,
Okay.
the second. Any discussion? I'd like to again thank the members of the compensation committee for the task force for all of the work that they did. That was well laid out and lots of great data, and that helped us a lot in our discussions. We appreciate Ronnie leading that committee and that task force and all of the members of that task force.
I appreciate our staff too, sitting down and understanding that, the variables that go into it, the data and the emotion. I mean, it is emotional as well too. So, but I really appreciate our staff. Certainly.
They did a fantastic job.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the 25-26 letters of appointment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are moving on to our open enrollment, student approvals, and wait lists. This will be a motion.
Yep. So back in January, we were required to, it's crazy to think about next year. We think about it in January, but the board did approve the presented open enrollment seats. And again, included in that was any and all speech only IEPs, but we have 0 for cross categorical and beyond. This year we didn't get any cross categorical. We do have 1 speech in the numbers here too as well. So, so ultimately the board was kind of forced to make this motion because we decided back in January. So there'll be 2 separate motions to this because we need to approve all the students coming in, and then state statute, since we don't have a reason to decline any of the students, the 16 total, that we need to approve those 2 as well. So I'll be just looking for 2 separate motions. So the administration recommend the board to make a motion to approve all open enrollment applications and alternate open enrollment applications not incoming with an expulsion order or an IEP more than speech.
Any discussion? When do people who are enrolling into the district tell us why they're interested in this?
We call, I reach out to them and say, I mean, most of the people that we kind of know, are coming at times. This year, there's been a little bit different. I mean, they've been reaching out, and obviously there's been some volatility in some of our feeder schools with some programming, and possibly there's a few people in there who may reflect that too as well. But again, I'll reach out to them, welcome them, ask them for a tour if we haven't gotten that far yet. We do know there's a couple people who have applied, though, who are current students here who have moved out of the district. Who now it's the time, again, we keep them under an alternate open enrollment. And then ultimately, since they did move out of the district, they need to reapply for open enrollment coming up here too. So that is reflected in there as well. Those are easy. They're like, Ron, how do I make this happen? So,
And we were able to accommodate all those.
all of them. Yep. Everybody fits completely underneath all of the limits that were set back in January. So. And that's why Rebecca were able to easily handle all of our open enrollments and still have those scattering of our new enrollees coming in from all the building and new construction and movements.
Other discussion questions? All right, all in favor of approving the open enrollment applications and alternative enrollment applications not incoming with an expulsion order or an IEP more than speech only, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, no motion passes.
Thank you. Next, the administration is recommending the board make a motion to approve all students who have applied out of the Merton Community School District. And you'll see a total of 16 students who have 3 of them currently. And again, we'll be reaching out to them. In many of the cases we already know because they've had discussions with us about why they might be looking for a different opportunity. So when you see that, that means 13 new students basically are already on our revenue. Almost. Some of them are 14
15.
of the conservative 15. So obviously, though, open enrollees out, they, obviously we pay approximately $9,000 to that district or $4,500 from a 4K standpoint too. So, goes both ways, unfortunately. So, but yeah.
Okay, so motion to approve all students who have applied out of the Merton Community School District.
Yep, that's it.
There's a second.
That's it.
Motion in the second, any discussion? Same thing again. Do we know why people are looking?
We'll be reaching out. Yep, we reach out to them. So we know we know why 3 of them are. The other 13, we'll be reaching out. A common theme sometimes is either childcare reasons, from a 4K standpoint. Some of them decide, hey, I'm going to come back, just because of childcare reasons. What we really are seeing though is people who are moving into our district who are choosing to stay at their current school. So they love their feeder school, they love Hamilton or wherever they're coming from. They have the ability to transport them. So when I reach out to them, it's like, hey, Ron, great, but we want to finish at said school. Hey, I get that. Thank you. I understand that from a parent standpoint. If that's something you're able to. If not, just remember we're here for you too, and tell them all the great things that we're doing too as well.
So to the extent that you find out that information, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Share that with us in an aggregate fashion. So
Absolutely.
we can
Yep.
Tell who
Yep.
people-
Now, sometimes again, I make phone calls and emails. As we know, adults need to respond. We've talked about that a few times this evening. So, but yeah, we can definitely share that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of recommending of the motion to approve all students who applied out of the Merton Community School District, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right, motion carries. When I say opposed, nay, it's supposed to say nay, I am not. All right, and our next one is the final draft review of the 3rd grade to 4th grade promotion and retention policy, which is 345.41.
You had a question.
Question was. let's take a minute. So you had indicated when we brought this up in the administrator's report.
Yep.
That this might be. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something to the extent that because of this policy, this might be harder for some children and families. Could you?
Sure, it's not going to
elaborate
be
on that?
harder for promotion. I use the example of some students will always have a reading plan. Okay, so once you leave 3rd grade, if you still have a reading plan, the only way you can get out of that reading plan per state statute is to be proficient on the state assessment. Okay. I say that because for the student with an IEP in the area of reading, in order to qualify for an IEP in reading, you need to be at least 2 years behind your peers. Okay. So again, that our devotion towards, particularly reading, I mean, we're hiring another person for specifically, specially designed reading instruction. But the reality is if you have an IEP, you may not be able to pass state proficiency exam on that grade level. If you do pass, we look at it and say, oh, great. Now we need to maybe we can revisit the IEP or do whatever we need to do. So ultimately, though, as part of the process, you'll see is if a student with an IEP win a reading plan, the team is involved, right? You get your special educator and the LEA and things like that. So, so that's just kind of the logistics of things. It doesn't mean you don't get promoted. It means there's a conversation that occurs. And you've seen all the parent communication, the sign-offs, the authorizations. Again, big heads up and thank you to Maria. But ultimately, it is required by state statute that you have a plan in place to address reading deficiency, basically 3rd grade on. And this policy addresses that legal requirement.
And this is for IEPs, not 504s.
No, 504 is this is for any student who is not proficient by the time they leave 3rd grade for the 3rd grade test. Yep. So just the mandate that we're doing in a process that we'll have to follow. Yep. So again, if there's any other feedback, we'll be bringing this back in June 9th for final read.
Any other feedback? All right.
Thank you.
So make sure. Then I think that brings us to future meeting and agenda items.
So our next meeting is June 9th. From that standpoint. And then we also will have to, and again, I haven't seen we'll have to come together in June too as well to do the district administrative mid-year eval as well. So thank you very much for filling out those forms too. Again, I'm sure, a couple people more responded to the doodle polls. So, but we'll set that date coming forward here in June. So.
With June 9th, could you remind us of our July date?
June, sure. We picked July 21st. July 21st, correct. Yep. And we're back at 6 o'clock. We're back at 6 o'clock.
And what are we recommending for August?
Typically, we've done it towards the end. end of the month, August, the last one would be August 25th. That would, our open house that week for the district is the 27th on the Wednesday, so 25th works. I mean, any day except the 27th of August, true.
Keep it to Monday, it's the 25th.
Okay, August 25th.
And when do we need to set the community meeting in September? Or is that, do we just?
It's already
do that
set.
up-
Yep,
that
so we
second
set the, we
Tuesday?
set the annual meeting at the annual meeting
That's right.
next year. Yep, you got it.
I forget that every.
So the only request that I have, as we think about September, I mean, we can, when all five of us are here, if we wanted to have a more global conversation about a steady meeting, we certainly can. The only one I recommend or ask is October's as late as possible. Typically, we do it the last Monday or Monday typically is when we've done it, just to give us some time to process everything, get back together and things like that.
And I do have the annual meeting already on schedule. I just feel comfortable.
Yep.
Any other future meeting or agenda items?
Just- I just wanted to thank the board and everyone else for allowing the meeting today to move back to 6:30.
You got reversed. Yeah.
Not a problem.
There we go. Everybody's got.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.